All right, everybody, welcome back. Week 4, Chapter 3. This week, we're going to start doing some JavaScript. Um, we're going to make our programs or our web applications do stuff. So, you're going to watch the video. I'll tell you about that in a second. Make sure that you read the chapter because they always cover more in the chapter than I cover in the video. Watch the Cengage video and watch how he kind of does things when he creates his duration calculator. Just kind of, and here's the code for it if you want to follow along. I just want you to get exposed to as much different stuff as you can. Your graded assignments, you're going to have the self-test exercises, a programming exercise, and the Chapter 3 quiz. For our assignment, when you go into the book at the end of the chapter, you have your self-test exercises. Answer these questions, put it in a Word document, submit it in Moodle. That's one assignment. The next is the programming exercises. And I have it broken down into steps. We're going to create this fluid conversion web app in this video. And we're going to do it kind of out of the, I don't know why they do it in this order. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't like it. So we're going to do it in a different order. But anyway, we're going to end up with the same thing. So if you can see, there is, I've got limited screen real estates here, so I do my best to make sure you can see everything I'm pointing at on the screen. It doesn't always work out. So the first page is going to, well, this is the first page down here on the bottom. And I can't scroll down any further. First page is going to be just kind of an about page, informational, fluid conversion. It's going to say some things. Super easy page. The next page is going to be the an interface with a slider and a button. When you click the button, it's going to tell you how many gallons or liters or something like that, back and forth. So we're going to do that. And I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, we'll actually expound on this. This will convert gallons to liters. And then next week, we're going to make it do both back and forth, depending on a radio button. Anyway, that's this week's assignment. This link right here, Chapter 3 starting folder structure. I've created a zip file with a folder structure in it that I prefer to use. And you can do this any way you want to, as long as it works. I have no preference, and as long as the end result is the same, you won't hear anything from me. But if you want to just an easy start, especially if you've never done this before, just click on that. It'll download a zip file. If you open that zip file, you will get the Chapter 3. See, I've done this a few times. You'll get the Chapter 3 project files. Just drag those out of the compressed zip file and throw them on your desktop or wherever you plan on doing your homework from. In that folder, there will be two other folders, one labeled CSS, and this has a file in it, jQuery Mobile 1.4.5 CSS. This is going to be, we're going to use this to style the page. Instead of writing our own CSS. And you can do that if you want to, but I like the way that this thing formats buttons and inputs and everything already, and I like the way it looks, so I'm just going to use it. But if you want to style it on your own, that's fine. You'll also see a JavaScript or JS folder. In there, there's the jQuery and the jQuery Mobile JavaScript as well. So we're going to use those this semester in just about every project. And we will also add our own custom CSS on the end in some, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, if you open up your Visual Studio Code, it's already loaded for me, but you go to File, Open Folder, and just navigate to that Chapter 3 Project Files folder, select it, and it'll open it. And then you should see on this left-hand side here, you've got the main folder, Chapter 3 Project Files, and then it shows you the folders underneath, the CSS, the JS folders, and then the files within those folders. So that's where we're going to start. And the first thing we need to do is have a info page. So if you have this selected, go to File, New File. And this thing acts differently every time I open it. It's so weird. Hold on, File. File. It was asking me language and stuff earlier. This makes no sense. Close that. File. New file. Why is this doing so weird? All right. So if you were following along, that was odd. And again, I just downloaded this, last week, just like you guys. So we're learning together. The first time I opened some files or tried to create a new file, it asked me what language I was using in it, and it asked me to choose HTML or CSS or Python or 100 other things. This time when I did it, it just kind of asked me to name the file. So, I don't know. One way or the other it works. So I named it ch3_info. This will be the main page that I use, and it should have, if I go to that chapter 3 project files folder on my desktop, you can see that it's in there. No, you can't because I got this too close up. Okay, so you can see that it created that file right in there. And then you can also see it out here. You got to make sure these are in the right place. This is what we're going to call the root. This project file folder is going to be like the root directory, and we're just putting these on the root. Everything else will be in its own folder, but our main web pages will be on the root. So here we need to do our the doc type, HTML, right? And then just like every other page, you got an HTML and HTML. Now it's doing, same last week, it wasn't doing the end tag for me. Now it is, so I don't know. Then we need the head. And then inside the head, we're going to have a title, calc, and this is our info page, so I'm putting that as for this title to distinguish it from the other. And then in the header is where we're going to put all of our links to our CSS and our JavaScript files. So to link, I like to do this. So I know that this is the CSS. You don't have to do that. But comments are important. And this right here is how you do a comment. You see how it's greened out? Let me zoom that in a little bit. You see how it's green? Green means it's a comment. And you start it out with the arrow pointing that way and the exclamation point. And then you just finish it off or end it with another arrow going the other way. And that makes a comment. It's important to comment your code so you know what it's doing. We're going to link it to a style sheet. And that href, it's going to be in our CSS folder. And it's the jQuery .mobile. In fact, if you forget what the name of the file is, you can just look right here. Dash 1.4.5 .min.css, and then put an end on that. So one thing I notice here is that these little carrots on the side are red, which means bad. Red is bad. And what I've forgotten to do is put an end slash there, I think. So that should clear it up. It doesn't seem to. Space. Oh no, I forgot to put the doohickey, the quote thing. So make sure it's in quotes so it reads the text between, and make sure you have a little end caret there. So that's the only CSS I'm using for this particular project. And then we're going to need some JavaScript files. We're going to load the jQuery JavaScript files, and we're going to create our own custom JavaScript as well. So that's there's three JavaScript files that we need. They're all going to be in JS folder. I'm going to call mine the chapter3.js. That will be this. So that's a link to my custom JavaScript that I have not created yet. That ends up the string. So then we can just kind of copy this and look in here, and we want to link both of these jQuery files. So they're both in the JS folder and jQuery. Oh, well, look at that. See, this is awesome. It looks, this new thing looks in here and sees what JavaScript y'all got. So you don't, if you forget what the name of it is, you can just kind of do that. That is cool to me. That's new. See, as soon as I type in that JS slash, it's looking in the JS folder to see what JavaScript I got in there. So that is awesome. It's doing most of the work for me. And I really like that. Don't we like that? The last thing we need to do is scale and character set. A lot of people are using, mobile phones to view this, so it needs to figure out the screen width, the device scale, and all that good stuff. And a simple way to do that, and there's a lot more goes into it, but just for these projects, we're going to keep it simple. And you got to type this in here. You want the browser to check the viewport and see what it is. We want to make sure the content is going to be the width of the device, and we want the scale, initial scale, to be 1. So that's like 100%. And we're going to set the character set. Yeah, it's UTF-8. It's always UTF-8. And I have forgotten why we need to do this, but we do it. All right, so that fills out the head. Simple enough. And if we look at the project, the first page just says some stuff. It's got a header. It's got this nav bar, a header. It says some stuff. It's got a little ordered list here, and it says some more stuff. So let's type all that in there. The first thing we need to do is create a body. Open and close body, and give ourselves some room. This is where the content of our page is going to live. In the body, we got a div. And using jQuery, you give everything kind of a role. So this is data role. And this is going to be a page. Why is it doing that? I don't like that. So our first div is a page. And I like to come down here and comment when your divs get a little bit, when you get a lot of them, you want to make sure that you kind of label where they start and end, so you know what's in what page or what's in what div. Inside the page, we are going to have a nav bar, and that's a data role of a nav bar. Remember, red is bad. In the nav bar, it ends the divs for us. I like that, but I try to keep it clean, but also give myself some space to work. So this gets a little confusing. I want to add space to work here without going too far off the page. Just have an empty space. I guess every time I hit enter, it moves. So we want our unordered list, and then inside here we're going to have some list items. And I don't think I covered anchors last week when we did our refresher on HTML. So an anchor is just a hyperlink to either another place on the page or another web page entirely. So in our list item is going to be an anchor. It's just an A. And we're going to actually tie this to a function, a JavaScript function that changes the page. So A on click equals info. And that is going to be the name of our function. Oh, sorry, we've got to put this in quotes here. I don't know why that's red. We're also going to give this a class. This is again for JavaScript. It's going to be UI, it's crazy, UI-button, btn, -active, space, UI, -state, -persist. And what this does is it will keep the button highlighted for the page that you're on. So when you're on the info page, it'll appear blue, while the interface page is not. And then when you switch over to the interface page, it'll remain blue while the other one's not. That just kind of gives you some indication of where you are on what page. I do think in the video for the for Cengage, they kind of show you how to do a different menu where it's like there's a menu page and you go back to the menu page and then to another page, and you can do that if you want to. I don't like it. It just doesn't work for me. But that is what it is. So you can see here that the LI right above my head here is red. That's because we have not closed out the anchor tag yet. We want to make sure we close out that anchor, but before we do, I'm going to put a caret here. Okay, it closes out the anchor for us. And right in between those two carets, that we type some text in there, and that's what will appear as the list item. So this is going to be the text, and we're going to just call it information. And that's what it'll be on the button, and then everything else makes it a clickable button. So that is our first list item, and then we need a second list item for the about page. We're going to do the same thing. In fact, I'm not going to copy it all. This will be another function on click. Make sure you spell everything right because it won't work. On click, and this will be interface. Something doesn't look right. So the info and the interface look different. Not sure why. We'll figure that out in a minute. Interface. So again, one button's going to say information, the other one's going to say interface. And there's our two list items. The anchor tags are closed. List items are closed. The unordered list is closed. And this will end the nav bar. So we're going to take this up here. And I'm just going to comment here, end nav bar. You don't have to. I would like you to comment your code, especially when it gets confusing. To me, that I understand exactly what this is doing, but if you do not, write it down. So after the nav bar, we're going to have another div. And make sure you indent stuff properly, because when you come back and look at it a year from now, you won't be able to make sense of it. In fact, just showing off, I guess, this jQuery, this min means that it's been compressed. So there are no spaces in this. It would normally look, styled like this. But if you open these up, you'll see that this is just all, it's JavaScript that all the spaces have been removed. So it's really hard to figure out what's going on without those spaces. And we want to avoid that in all of our files. So after the nav bar, we're going to have the content of our page. So data role content. and it's going to have I'm going to give it an ID of content in case we want to style it. So it's data role content and an ID of content if we want to style it. And then in here, we're going to have our header, H1, and that's going to be fluid unit conversion. Forgetting how to spell. And then we're going to have a little paragraph. It says there are two primary, I think, units for measuring a volume of fluid. And if you keep forgetting, I mean, you're watching the video, so you won't forget, but if you forget what it says, you can just go back to the thing here. Two primary units of measured fluid. It's got a little unordered list and then the rest of that stuff. So we need our unordered list, another one, list item, and the first one is the imperial. Is that capitalized? Yeah. It uses units such as gallons. A metric and list item UL, another paragraph. This app, and we're just going to tell it what the app does. And you can no longer see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm going to put a... No, I'm not. I was thinking about putting a break in there. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to put a break in there so it appears on another line. And a break is simply BR, like that, in brackets. And all it does, it's like hitting the enter key on the web page, so it doesn't keep running on. It'll actually break and go down to a new line. So we are going to do that. And then the formula is liters equals gallons divided by 3.789. So it gives you the formula. You don't have to think about the formula. And I will end my P right here. And this ends the content. And that is it for the first page. So if we go to File and Save All, and I close this out, we can go back to our folder with the chapter 3 info in it and open it up, and you can see that we have our information link, our interface link, the two buttons we created. This is the first list item we did. The first, the nav bar. That's the nav bar that we did right there. And you can see that we didn't do any CSS, but we have the jQuery in there. So this is what jQuery makes it look like. Now we can go in, we can change the background or the font, we can center this, we can do whatever we want. I'm not going to worry about that, but this is just an about page. So if we go to click on interface, nothing happens because we haven't written the function yet. We also haven't written the function for the info. So I guess we can do that now. Why not? We will create a new file, and we're going to call it chapter3.js. And we're going to put it in the JS folder. And then it automatically opens it up. So we have our JavaScript file. And in here we need to write two functions right now to navigate back and forth between the two windows. So we tell it that it's a function, and we're going to call it info. And if you were in my Python class, this may look familiar if you've never done a function before. The function info is its name, and here's where you would add any arguments. If you are going to pass information to a function, you would add it here. We're not doing that in this case, but that's what those brackets are for. And then you got the squiggly brackets here to start and end the function. This just tells the computer, hey, this is where it starts, this is where it ends. Everything in between is what I want you to do. And this function is simple one line, window location. And we're going to tell it to go to the chapter 3 info. Is that what I called it? Chapter 3 info.html file. If you forget, it's over here. Whatever you named it, I don't care what you name it. And that's that. Oh, end it with a semicolon. And that is your first function. We're going to do kind of the same thing for the what was it, interface, window location equals whatever we called that. We haven't even created that file yet, so we'll call it chapter 3 interface .html, and we make sure we use, when we create it, we use the same name. We name it properly, because otherwise it won't know where it is or what it is. So those are our first two functions. So let's go ahead and create the next file, and we're going to call that, oh, see, now it's asking me select language. I don't know if I just did something different or what, but now it says select language, and I'm going to put HTML, and then I'm going to save it as, which is so weird. I just don't understand this program yet, but we're figuring it out together, right? Chapter 3 interface.html. Save that, make sure it shows up here. It's it looks like these are both actually in the JavaScript. Nope, they're not. Okay, they're on the root. So make sure that they are on the root. Your HTML is on the root, your JavaScript is in the JavaScript folder, and your CSS is in the CSS folder. So when you start making several pages that contain the same content, there are several methods that you can do where you only have to type it once, like ASPX and all that other kind of stuff. But for this class, we're just going to copy it. Copy everything down to the nav bar and throw it in the interface. Now we have to change a few things. The title should be interface, because it is a different file. So it'll have a different title when you switch back and forth. CSS is the same, the JavaScript is the same, scale is the same, so that's all great. Down here we want the nav bar to be the same, except we want to take this class, get it off of the info, and then put it on the interface, because that is the button that should be highlighted at this point. And then let's make sure we end, we have to, man, we stop doing that. We have to end, well, the page. And this thing helps. So it knows what's missing, right? It's just putting the div HTML and everything else in here. So I have to end the page. And I want to make sure that that stays in the right spot. And then go to File and Save All again. And now you can go back to your folder, just kind of looking and make sure everything's working correctly. If you open your info page, it still looks the same. You go to your interface, fingers crossed, nothing happens. Okay, that's awesome. I'm not sure what's going on there, but you can open the interface page, and it should open with just a, yeah. So it's not going back. And I think it has something to do with the fact that this is not recognized as, oh, it's because I have this extra L in here. If you misspell something, something doesn't look right, there's a problem. So if you can see that right here, maybe you caught it earlier in the video where I didn't. but there's an extra L in there. So now as soon as I get rid of that L, the interface lights up. Make sure you go back, and I got to change that on both of my pages. Go to File, save all, and then go back into my browser and open up the info. Bring that, where'd it go? Come on now. What are you doing? There, now I've got my fluid conversion and interface, and just it can bounce back and forth. So that is a JavaScript function that allows that to happen. Now you can do that with just HTML and link, but since this is a JavaScript class, we're doing some JavaScript to move pages, navigate pages. All right, so now we have to add in, I forgot what it looked like already. Oh, not that one. Maybe I closed the other window. It makes our project. Anyway, we're going to add in a slider and a button and some other stuff on the interface page. So after your nav bar, well, this one ends the page. Mess something up there. Oh, wrong caret. So after your nav bar, we're going to have another content div again, right? Data role content. Div data role content, and I'm going to give this an ID of content as well. That way, if I style one, I style both. And I'm not sure why it didn't do an end div for me, but pay attention to that. All right, so in our content, we are going to have a label. And that's going to be for the the gallon entry thingamabobber. Label 4 equals gallon. And we're going to say enter the quantity in gallons. And then we're going to have an input. Specify the type, and it's going to be range. And that's going to give us our slider. We're going to name it gallon. So we have the label for gallon, and this input is going to be the gallon that the label is for, if that makes any sense. You're labeling the input. It's going to have an ID of gallon, just to keep everything simple. The minimum is going to be 0, and the maximum is going to be 100. So you can only go from 0 to 100. You can't do negative gallons. You can't do more than 100 gallons. And we need to make sure we close that out. That's our input. Put a little break in there, and then put a button. And when we click that button, if we spell click correctly, it's going to run the display function. And we have not written that function yet, so we will do that in a second. But the button's going to say the word display on it. I'm going to put another break in there just to kind of keep it clean. And then we're going to add a table. I didn't cover tables last week either. But a table, think of like an Excel spreadsheet. It's going to have columns and rows, and it will display things in an organized fashion rather than kind of all over the page. In your table, you're going to have a table row. I did go over the tables. Yeah, we did do tables. So you know what I'm talking about. All right, good. Table row, table data, quantity, entered. So this is where we want to put the amount of gallons that they entered. And then we are going to add another table data. And we're going to give this an ID, this table data, ID equals quantity entered. Quantity, or quantity display. This way we can call this ID and put information in the HTML, in the inner HTML. When we run the function, we're going to get data, we're going to perform a calculation, and then we're going to output it. And this ID allows us to tell it where to put that data. And right now, make sure you have a 0 in that quantity display. It should be good for now. Let's jump over to our JavaScript. And the last function we're going to do is do that calculation. And we're going to call it display. And our little squiggly brackets. All right, so the first thing we're going to have to do is get a variable to hold the information. So var gallon. So a variable is going to be named gallon, and it's going to be equal to document dot get element by ID. It's probably on it. So if you can see right here, it gives you a list of things. This is probably element by ID. Yeah, it is. So you can see it right here. So if you just hit enter, you don't have to type it because it gets a real pain, and you got to make sure you do in camel case. Otherwise, it won't recognize it. If you don't know what camel case is, that's the first word is always lowercase, and every word after that always starts with an uppercase letter. So we're going to get the element named gallon. We're going to get the value of the element named gallon on the page. Dot value. So these are kind of read a little bit. What'd you do that for? Value. So these are kind of read a little bit backwards, maybe. I'm not sure. But the variable gallon is going to be equal to, and we go to the value of the element ID of gallon on the document that called it. Hope that makes sense. So in this case, the document that's calling it is the interface. It's going to go to the interface. It's going to find, okay, this is the input, and it's named gallon. So we're going to find out what the value is in this input, and then assign that to the variable gallon. So now gallon holds a number, whatever that number is, whatever the user puts in there. And then we need to get the document, not get element by ID, and we're going to put it in that quantity display. But we're going to put it in the inner HTML, and that's going to be, so we're telling it right now, go to the document, find this display quality, and in the HTML, write this. And we're going to put equals to gallon, the variable gallon plus the text gallons, space gallons, is equal to, and we're going to do plus gallon divided by, what was it, 3 point something or another, 3.789. Nope, that's a dash. And that's a circle. A zero, a circle. 3.789. So this is the formula. And actually, let's do this. You can put in parentheses so it just gives the thing. We're going to do the gallon, and then we're going to fix it to 2 decimal places, just to be, I don't know, whatever. And you just 2 fixed 2, and that means 2 decimal places. You can do 10 or 12 or 2 or 1 or whatever you want to do, but the 2 fixed gives it 2 decimal places. And then we gotta add liters here, text. I always make sure to add a space, because if you don't put that space here, it's going to mush the letters and the numbers and the variables all together. So this looks correct. I don't see any red. Let's go to File, Save All. And let's see what happens when we open that page back up. So I got page back up here. I've saved my documents. I'm going to refresh, and boom, there we go. You can see that I obviously spelled that wrong somewhere. It's on the interface page. And the quantity in gallons. Save. Bring this back and refresh again. And okay, I fixed that. And a quantity, we're going to double check our back and forth. That works still. The gallons. So this is the input entry of range. Now you can type a number in here and it will move the slider. You have these up and down buttons, which are really cool. And then you can just grab the slider and move it around, and that value will change accordingly. This is what jQuery does for us, and it's nice. You can do it without jQuery. It won't look as good unless you spend a lot of time styling. So again, you know, I hate it that a lot of you not had any HTML and CSS experience before. There's a ton of resources online. There are places you can go to kind of tell it what you want it to look like, or find a style and just download the stuff. It's good to know, and you really should. I mean, you go to GPT now, and they'll make a website for you doing the simple stuff. But if you don't understand how it works underneath, you're going to be at a disadvantage to everyone else. So really try and understand this. You may or may not use it in the future, as you know, AI is kind of taken over, but you really should know what it's doing underneath. And I'll tell you from experience that ChatGPT and those, they do a fairly good job, and they'll do a lot of the work for you. But there's 9 times out of 10, there's always an issue. And if you don't understand what it's doing and you can't read the code, you won't be able to fix it. So this is why we're here, and this is what we're doing. So you've got your display here, your slider. And when you click the button display here, it tells you, boom, 19 gallons is equal to 5.1 liters. And I don't have a calculator. Does my calculator work? It doesn't work on this computer. Well, let's just, I'm gonna test it here, because I don't know if that's right. 19 divided by, what was it? 3.78. 9. And what was the answer? Yeah, 5.1. Okay. So 19 gallons is equal to 5.1 liters. I checked my math. I know my formula is correct, and that's it. That is it. That's the whole assignment right there. 0 gallons is equal to 0 liters. And then you go to 70 and display. And it works every time. And it resets every time you go to the page. Because we store that variable in JavaScript. We're storing that variable only while the page is live. Once the page is not alive anymore, that variable gets wiped and everything kind of gets reset. Later on, we will learn how to store those variables in local storage or on your server or whatever, but that's later. So that's your assignment for this week. It's super simple. There's a lot. If you don't have any experience with this stuff, this is a lot. There's only 3 functions in here, and they're all like 1-2 lines, but you really need to understand these basics to move on. So make sure you really understand what we're doing. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you next week.